Well, hello, folks. I'm LA Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Archived on YouTube. It's under the name LA Little, the channel. You can catch me there on any device, anytime, anywhere. As far as these markets, another day of up, folks, and it's not as if that's a new story. That's the same story, one we've seen over and over again now for what, 3 weeks, I believe. So let's pop in here, pull this up a little bit so we can see it. So we had the composite actually across the board. The leadership was in the Russell, up 0.5%. NDX was down, not down, but it was the least participant. Qualcomm had some earnings come out, hit pretty hard. Google's still struggling. Apple had the malware thing that really kept them in check today, so nothing there. Gold traded flat, silver as well. Bonds sold down again, oil down again as well, and the big trip higher on the dollar continues. Folks, I wrote an article today. It'll be out later this evening. It was on Market Watch today, talking about currencies, and talking about the dollar and how this move looks to continue and looks to continue big. So you want to check that out here. It'll show up here probably a little bit later this evening. As far as these markets, let's pop over, look at the S&P 500. Remember, we had the breakout yesterday. Today we extend higher, volumes tailing off. That's typically what you see in this kind of a move. And folks, this is a juggernaut move, and there is a consistent, constant bid underneath it. You've had 2 opportunities now. I made a comment on the front page today. When you give someone who wants this market to go down a dagger, and all they can do is create a small flesh wound, you're in trouble. You've had 2 shots here, 2-bar reversals. This one really wasn't the best setup. It was fairly extended at the time, but the one that really was set up well was here, because that was a 2-bar with a failed breakout. And when I said, all they can create is a flesh wound, all they did was a retest of the prior bar here, and that's where the volume was, right? It tested right into the bottom of it and really could not go any deeper. And since then, 2 more days straight up. Today was ECB, it was Draghi. Draghi, looked over and saw his big tool bag and got all excited and told everybody about it, how he's going to use any and all methods necessary, including unconventional, i.e. QE, and that everybody was on board. And, I don't know if the Germans are on board, but that was what he said. And, of course, the markets cheered and pushed higher again, day after day. So we've got a situation here where, there's really nothing, and it's kind of going to be a short show tonight because there's really nothing new. You have markets pushing higher. You have and you have it across the board. You have it here in the Dow, which has been leading up. You had the NASDAQ composite, the NDX, and the Russell all consolidating now for a week, 5 days at the highs. I suspect these are ready to push too. Tomorrow you have the employment number. Unless that thing really disappoints, you're going to see more employment growth. As long as it's not too hot or truly disappoints, I suspect these markets are probably going to work even higher. And I say that because when I look over at the sectors, because think about it, stocks move sectors, sectors move markets. And when I look at the sectors, folks, there is nothing weak here. IBB, a little rotation out of it, a little buying comes back in today. Transports, new highs, pushing higher. Stocks, little consolidation, 4 or 5 days, just like the NASDAQ, getting ready to try to pop the top. Rotation into the two weaker ones, XLB, XLE. I got a question on the nat gas play tonight. I'll talk about it, but you can see here these are set up pretty well. Financials, pushing new highs. Industrials, new highs. Technology, pushing new highs. Folks, there's nothing weak. XLP pushing new highs. XLU pulls back today, big volume, but it was an inside day, so it doesn't really tell you anything. XLV pushing new highs. And finally, the XLY consolidating 5 days, and it also looks ready to set up for another push up. So straight across the board, all the sectors stronger, looking strong, nothing weakness there that I can see. You got 5-day consolidations on NASDAQ, NDX, and the Russell, and you have the Dow and the S&P pushing new highs. That's a pretty uniform statement about what's going on here. If I look in the auxiliary markets, there's really nothing there, that hasn't been there. And I remember, like a week ago, there was an astute comment that was made, and I repeated here from one of the viewers. And matter of fact, let me remind you, to participate in the show, just come over to TA Today, click on the NeoTA TV, and then you can pop in here, and there's instructions there of how to send your questions. I just ask that you, give me a time frame and a direction if you're giving me a stock question. Of course, if you want me to talk about something else, then it's not applicable. But when I look at the world markets, I continue to see weakness. It's nothing like what you're seeing here. A good example of it is emerging markets. They can't get started. And the most risky frontier markets breaking down. And at the same time, dollar stronger, pushing highs. FXE on Draghi today breaks down. Now it's back underneath the lows, going to go test the lows on the weekly and on the monthly. And actually it's already under the lows on the weekly, but the monthly is the test. And that article will talk about it, but it's testing these lows. And if it gets under them, folks, this thing's probably going to par, if you can imagine that. So dollar strong, all the currencies weak. It's a race to zero with everybody else. Of course, with the dollar strong, that puts pressure on all the commodities. Here's gold, silver, same thing. It also puts pressure on any of the commodities. Here's copper that's struggling. And, we could actually go to the basket over here, the continuous commodity index. You can see that one's down at lows, broke down. So that's the same story. Overseas markets, there's really not any strength there. It's no slam dunk on the upside there for sure. But we don't care. We just don't care. We're just going up, right? And the astute viewer I was talking about, that I didn't get to finish the thought, he was saying, hey, well, maybe everybody's buying into the U.S. markets. Well, yeah, maybe so. That does seem to be what's happening, and I had not brought up that point. It was a good point, and that I'm sure is part of what's happening. The one thing that I am starting to see that I'm not quite sure what to make of it yet is these high-quality corporate bonds are starting to sell down, and even more so than I thought. A pullback was okay, but this is starting to get some volume and pressing lower. Now, I know there's a lot of corporate issuances, and I also know that, this market thinks that the Fed's going to have to raise its rates at some point. So maybe that's part of what's going on there. If I look at it to 20-year, this one's back in here doing a test on this high. Remember, sometime back I talked about this particular high being the one it was probably going to target. That's 118.36. We got as low as 118.21. We got as low today as 118.31. So you can see it's testing right into that bar. That's where the volume is. It's underneath this one, right? And it's you know, it up until today it had held it, right? And what I'm talking about is the retest regen. Today it actually got under it. So I'm going to be watching this tomorrow, because tomorrow we got the employment number, and now we're under it. You want to see it. If it's really going to break farther, you want to see it stay under it for another bar. You could see the volume pick up tomorrow and this press into this bar and come deeper. If it does, that's saying, hey, it's a range trade. Well, you got a big volume spike at the top of the range. It just means at some point we're probably going back up there, but right now it's trying to decide, is it going to retest and regenerate higher now, or are we going to get some sort of a range trade which probably does a full retest on this one, which would bring it, you know, back down into this area here. So tomorrow we'll probably tell the tape, you know, on that. Junk bonds also coming in some. Nothing worrisome there. So that's what makes me think that high quality corporate bonds probably has to do with supply more than anything else. And let me see here. One last thing. I know one of the members keeps working the UNL trade. Got your big spike up again today. This thing's trying to test a high. And if you look at UNG itself, front month just blew everything out. So if I don't know which one you're in, but you got the big spike volume. That's short covering, folks. That's a big move. Which kind of leads me into the next thing, which was a question that has to do with a nat gas play. It's called G-Log, and it's kind of interesting because this particular viewer who asks questions occasionally has been watching this, and last night he was the one that asked about the Whole Foods. If you remember last night, Whole Foods, I had done I had done a piece on it back here on the front page. Pop back over here. I done a piece on it, and if you hadn't viewed it, you know, it's worth viewing. And last night's show I talked about it again. You know, the setup in front of earnings. I did that yesterday morning. Earnings came out last night, and of course they were good, as you can see from the chart. This thing just blew everything away today. That was the trade setup that I thought could take place. We had traded long into that, and it was interesting because, you know, this question was asked last night. And I'm pretty sure this gentleman's not a subscriber, but it's almost like he reads my mind, because tonight he asked about G-Log, and he says, what about G-Log? I remember, you know, you've mentioned it before, and it's reached support on the TA Today charts on the daily. So if I pop over to the daily, and what I believe is being said here is the, you know, support zone as you see it here on the TA Today charts. You've got 3 of them set up. It's at the very top, and then today it actually popped from it. And yeah, this is a nice setup. And matter of fact, I personally did buy into this on this plunge, on this particular day on the plunge. So what's the setup here? Well, you kind of got, you know, and actually going back over here, you got the energy stocks that to me look like they're finally starting to try to put in a low. Of course, this is an energy play. This one has a nicer setup than most, and that's one of the reasons I like it, and I assume that that's the reason this subscriber is or member is asking. Gets under it, back over it, has less volume, right? It's a spike reversal, leads to 3 days of nice spike, right? These 3, with volume, you know, picking up on those 2. Then you get a little pullback, no volume, right? Then you get another spike, more volume. So you can see the trend here. Volume surges on the upside, nothing on the downside. As you come back down, there was a little volume on this, but still lower than here. Now you come down here, wide, fast price movement to the downside, right to support, and we'll look at the volume. It's not there. Now, so far, you haven't got the big volume spike back up. But this pattern, the way it's playing out, is nice. It's a good looking pattern. Let's look at the weekly right quick, and then let me try to answer the question directly. It says it's reached support, bounced there today, had a lot of positive price action and volume off the October low. Maybe it's the strength in nat gas, which is I just showed you, because of a cold winter catalyst. These guys actually are shippers. They take and ship LNG overseas. So looking at it on a weekly, there's a little bit more concern here in my part, and that is that you've got a high volume spike on a weekly into this low. Now that, of course, is support. I do think it can come back there again. So if you're trading this thing, I think you have to view it as a trade. And then, of course, the question is where can the trade go? This low, which is back into the thick of all of this congestion. And this bar, these two bars you see over here, which were this high and low, right? So I suspect this could make it to here or just below it, right? So somewhere in that price range is the target, 24 to about 26. I think that's where you have to be looking at it on the upside. And of course it's trading at 20, so there's a lot of upside still in this if in fact it's going to make that kind of a move. So anyway, I do like the setup. I don't think it's a bad setup at all. Let me look at the monthly right quick. Yeah, same sort of thing here. So, I think this one's probably the key here is like with anything in a sector that's weak, is that sector gets rotation, money coming into it. You're starting to see that. I think you could get a nice little spike back up on this. You just had a little small ABCD down from here, right? Finished it off. You actually have a potential large ABCD back the other way, right, which would get you up into those numbers that we're talking about almost, right? Get you back up to be swing point highs. So yeah, I like it. I think it's a tradable play. Tomorrow, it's all going to be about the employment numbers now. But there's nothing in these charts, and I've been saying this for I think 2.5, 3 weeks, at least 2 weeks. There's nothing in these charts to tell us this market's going to pull back yet. All right? There's no setup yet to say this crazy straight up move is going to stop. And until you see that setup, you just have to believe it's going to continue. And you need to, be positioned that way. And I know there's a lot of folks that can't believe it and a lot of folks that want to fight it. But folks, the money's made with the trend most of the time. It's only at the edges, right? It's only at the reversals where that's not true. Otherwise, it's trade with the trend. And if I go back, to the indexes, and if you bear with me just a second here, I'll grab it. If I go back to the S&P 500, for example, and bring it up, it's pretty hard to argue that this trend isn't up. I mean, that's pretty much up to me, and now it's over the highs. And if I look at this on a weekly, it's up. It's up everywhere you look. They're all up, folks. They're all up. And until that changes, you best try to line yourself with it. Yeah, at some point it will stop, but this has a head of momentum, and right now they are buying any little dip. That tells you there's a lot of folks still trying to get in. Have yourself a great night. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. You tell a friend or tell two. I'm LA. This is and it was your daily NeoTA wrap. Have a great night. I'll see you next time. Good night, folks.